There's this incredible story that gets told on a night before Easter. It's kind of hidden in plain sight, right there in the Bible readings. In this explainer, we're going to unpack that epic narrative. It literally takes us on a journey from the very beginning of creation all the way to the resurrection.
So what is it that makes this one night, the night before Easter, so incredibly powerful? It's more than just waiting around for the sun to come up on Easter Sunday, right? The real power, it's in a story. A really ancient story that starts in the dark, and it ties everything together, the past, the present, and the future, all in one amazing service.
Okay, so our story actually starts in a really interesting place. Not with a bang, but with quiet. The stage is set on Holy Saturday, in this kind of stillness.
Yeah, the best way to describe this day is quiet anticipation. It's this deep, profound pause where it feels like the whole world is just holding its breath. You're caught right between the incredible sadness of the crucifixion and the mind-blowing joy you know is just around the corner. And it's in that silence that we get ready to hear the story.
And then, as night finally falls, the vigil kicks off. And where does it start? We get thrown all the way back to the very beginning. The first big chapters of this whole epic come straight from the Old Testament.
So get this, the service doesn't jump right to the resurrection. No, it starts at the dawn of time. From the Old Testament, we hear the story of creation itself, a reminder of God's original good plan. Then we jump forward a bit to the story of Abraham from Genesis 22, a really powerful story about faith and covenant. And after that, we get this huge theme of freedom, right from the book of Exodus, when God parts the Red Sea to save his people. So you see what's happening? We're building these three huge pillars right from the Old Testament: creation, covenant, and freedom.
Okay, so with that foundation in place, this story takes a turn. We're still in the Old Testament, but we shift gears from history to prophecy. And this is where things get really interesting, because it starts building this incredible sense of anticipation for what's next.
And check this out. This promise from the prophet Ezekiel, from the Old Testament, is a huge moment. He talks about a future renewal, about getting a new heart and a new spirit, a total transformation from the inside out. So this isn't just about fixing things. It's a promise to make something brand new. It's basically a massive clue, just a huge piece of foreshadowing for where this whole story is heading.
And it's not just Ezekiel. You've got other Old Testament prophets, guys like Isaiah and Baruch, who jump in with their own pieces of the puzzle. They talk about a covenant that will last forever, an invitation for anyone who's thirsty to come and drink, the gift of wisdom. When you put them all together, these prophecies from the Old Testament are painting this incredible picture of a future just bursting with hope and redemption.
All right, this right here, this is the pivot point for the entire night. Everything we've been talking about from the Old Testament, creation, the covenant, freedom, all those prophecies, we start to see them not just as history, but as promises. And now we're about to see how every single one of those promises gets answered as the story finally crosses over into the New Testament. Okay, here we go. This is the turning point. All those promises we heard from the Old Testament, they're about to be fulfilled as the story makes a dramatic shift over to the readings from the New Testament.
And this phrase, it just says it all. After all this time, sitting in the dark, listening to these ancient stories, everything changes. A light literally breaks through the darkness. And I mean that literally, in the church, but also figuratively, in the story itself.
And boom, there it is, the climax of the whole story. This one sentence from the New Testament, from the Gospel of Matthew, changes absolutely everything. This is it. This is the fulfillment from all those promises from the Old Testament. That freedom from the Red Sea in Exodus, it finds its ultimate meaning right here. That new heart Ezekiel promised, it's happening now. This is the mountaintop the entire story has been climbing towards.
But wait, the story doesn't just stop there, like it's just some event from long ago. The liturgy brings it right into the here and now, makes it personal for us. There's a reading from the New Testament book of Romans that connects the resurrection directly to baptism. It basically says that through baptism, every single person gets to be a part of this huge cosmic story. You die to your old self and rise to a brand new life.
So, okay, we've just gone on this massive journey all the way from Genesis to an empty tomb. So what's the point? What's the big takeaway here? Why these readings, and why in this exact order?
Here's the key. This isn't just a random collection of cool stories. Not at all. They have been so carefully chosen to trace the entire story of salvation from start to finish. It's one single epic story, and the real genius of it is that it makes you sit in the dark and listen to that long, long history of promises before you ever get to see the light of their fulfillment.
So let's just recap the journey we've been on, right? First, we laid the foundation with the Old Testament. God creates, He makes a covenant, and He sets His people free. Then, still in the Old Testament, the prophets come in and start building up this hope for an even bigger renewal. Then, bam, the climax hits in the New Testament with the resurrection, where all those promises come true. And finally, that huge story gets brought down to a personal level for you and me through baptism. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. See, the Easter Vigil isn't just about remembering some old story. It's about living it. It's an invitation to experience that story as real, right now. So it kind of leaves each one of us with a question, doesn't it? How can this ancient story, this story about darkness turning into light, about a promise finally coming true, how can it bring new light into our lives today?